My husband, Mark, used the excuse of taking his mother for cancer treatment to fly abroad and marry another woman. The moment I found out, I locked him out of every single account we owned, leaving him with nothing. 8 years of my youth, a life of devotion, all for this. What did I get in return? A dismissive envelope with $2,000 and a carefully staged play about taking his mother to the Mayo Clinic for stage 4 stomach cancer. An accidentally discovered video live stream tore the whole lie to shreds. There she was, my supposedly dying mother-in-law, Helen, beaming and clapping in the front row as Mark slipped a wedding ring onto his mistress's finger. They were so sure this quiet seamstress from Chicago would just collapse in a heap and cry her eyes out. They were wrong. That vile husband of mine was about to pay a price so steep it would shatter his bones. This is the story of how I turned the tables. A cold Chicago rain hammered against the roof of our 4-story brownstone in Lincoln Park. I was 35, an age where youthful dreams had long since faded. I was just a tailor, my life a quiet world of fabric bolts and spools of thread. My husband, Mark, was a regional sales manager for an import-export firm, always in a crisp dress shirt, a man who seemed to move through clouds. That evening, Mark came home with a heavy, unnatural gravity about him. He didn't even change his clothes, just walked straight to the sofa, tossed a thick folder of medical records onto the coffee table, and let out a long, weary sigh. His voice was hoarse, thick with manufactured grief. The doctors at Northwestern sent her home, Amy. They said there's nothing more they can do. It's stage 4 stomach cancer. The tumors are spreading too fast. I was so stunned the scissors I was holding slipped from my hand, clattering against the hardwood floor with a cold, sharp sound. Helen, my mother-in-law, had always prided herself on her robust health, her meticulous fit, her obsessive exercise regimen. How could she suddenly be handed a death sentence? The sorrow of a daughter-in-law felt like salt being rubbed into an open wound. Helen? But she's so healthy. Mark, are you sure the hospital didn't make a mistake? I stammered, moving closer, reaching for the medical file. Mark swatted my hand away, snatching the papers back with a gaze so firm it was cruel. A mistake? How could they make a mistake like this? If she stays here, she's just waiting to die, counting the days. But a friend of mine in Florida told me about a new experimental treatment protocol down there. It has a high survival rate. I've made up my mind. As long as there's a sliver of hope, I'm taking it. Whatever it costs, I have to get Mom to that clinic in Miami, he continued, his voice hardening. I just sold the old SUV. Tomorrow, I'm going to the bank to withdraw the entire balance from our joint savings account. Mom's condition can't wait. Hearing him talk about selling the car and draining our savings, the only financial cushion we had after years of scrimping, made my stomach drop. But then I thought of my mother-in-law's life hanging by a thread, and I quickly nodded. Okay. Of course, money is just an object. Saving a life is what's most important. Let me clear my schedule at the shop. I'll go with you and Mom. I reasoned. She's so sick and weak. It'll be hard enough for you to manage the luggage and paperwork by yourself, let alone navigate a new city. I can go to cook for her, give her massages, help her bathe. I'll be there to take care of her so you can focus on dealing with the doctors and logistics. Before I could finish, Mark snapped. He glared at me, his eyes wide, the veins in his neck bulging as he shouted, "Are you insane? What are you going to do there? You get lost going 2 blocks from the house. You think you can navigate a hospital in a city you've never been to? You'd just be in the way. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to travel and live in Miami? But I'm worried about her." I shrank back, tears welling in my eyes, hurt by his harshness. Worried about what? Stay home and keep your shop running. Earn some money. I'll handle the important things, Mark retorted. He turned his back on me, grabbing a few sets of clothes and stuffing them into a suitcase, refusing to look at me again. For 8 years, Mark's word had been law in our house. I told myself he was just stressed and terrified about his mother's illness, that I shouldn't be so sensitive. 3 days later, at the chaotic international terminal of O'Hare Airport, the noise of distant departures couldn't drown out my heavy sighs. I was juggling several bags filled with medication, protein powders, and special broths, scurrying to keep up with them. One thing struck me as odd. For a woman on the verge of death from stage 4 stomach cancer, Helen looked anything but frail. She wore an elegant plum-colored wool coat, her hair styled perfectly in a neat bun. Her posture was erect, her sharp eyes darting around the check-in area. When it was time for them to go through security, Mark gave my shoulder a few loose, indifferent pats. "Take care of the house, okay? I'll call you once I get Mom settled in and admitted to the clinic." My eyes filled with tears. I turned to take my mother-in-law's hand. "Mom, please take care of yourself over there, listen to the doctors, and have Mark video call me so I can see you." Helen coolly pulled her hand away, avoiding my touch, as if I were carrying a disease. She reached into her designer handbag, pulled out a thick, plain business envelope, and shoved it into my hand. The force was so abrupt that the corner of the envelope dug painfully into my palm. "Take this," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. She looked at me as if I were a complete stranger. What is this, Mom? You should keep this. It's expensive over there," I stammered, trying to push it back. Helen let out a cold, derisive smirk. She tossed back a sentence as sharp as a razor blade, severing every tie of affection we ever had. "Just take it. I want to clear my debts. It's $2,000, payment for your services these past few years. From now on, this family owes you nothing." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her back ramrod straight, toward the security gate. She never once looked back. Mark hurriedly dragged his suitcase after her, leaving me standing frozen amidst the bustling river of travelers. "Payment for your services." The words echoed in my skull. 8 years as a daughter-in-law. I'd nursed her through illnesses, brewed her herbal foot soaks late at night, and worked my fingers to the bone to help pay off the mortgage on this house. And my reward was those 2 cold words. I numbly hailed a cab and went home. The 4-story brownstone felt cavernously empty. Sitting in the sprawling living room, I stared at a crumpled leaflet about patient care that Mark had left on the table. A chill ran down my spine. A woman's intuition told me that tonight's flight was carrying away something that would never, ever return. 3 days, exactly 72 hours passed since the taxi carrying Mark and Helen disappeared from the airport curb. I lived in a state of suffocating anxiety. Our normally quiet brownstone now felt desolate, hauntingly vast. During the day, I buried myself in my work, the rhythmic whir of my sewing machine, a desperate attempt to fill the emptiness. But as soon as night fell, the silence and shadows would press in on me, squeezing my chest. I clutched my phone, repeatedly waking the screen just to look at the last message I'd sent. "Have you and Mom landed safely? Let me know if you need anything." Not a single reply. My calls on every app, WhatsApp, FaceTime, Messenger, all went unanswered. I tried to reassure myself. He must be busy with hospital admissions in Miami, the time difference. He probably hadn't gotten a new SIM card yet. And Helen, a woman with a terminal diagnosis, must be utterly exhausted after such a long flight. My naive, submissive nature blinded me to all reason and suspicion. On the 3rd night, the clock struck 2 a.m. Rain pattered against the window panes. I tossed and turned in the massive bed, finally reaching for my phone. The mindless habit of scrolling through Facebook kicked in, a way to kill time during my bout of insomnia. My thumb slid past an endless stream of mundane posts until it froze on an update from Kevin. Kevin was a high school friend of mine and Mark's. He had moved with his family to California nearly a decade ago, and we rarely spoke. His status was short, but it was filled with celebratory emojis. Flew from the West Coast to the East Coast to see my best bud get married. Congratulations to the happy couple. Childhood sweethearts, finally tying the knot. Below the text was a saved live stream video, just over 3 minutes long. The phone screen lit up the darkroom. The setting was a stunning, sun-drenched beach in Miami. Gentle waves lapped the shore. A wedding arch, woven with thousands of white roses, billowed in the breeze. The sound of a string quartet filled the air. I was about to scroll past, thinking it had nothing to do with me, when my eyes caught the figure of the groom standing at the altar. He wore a handsome cream-colored linen suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, a radiant smile on his face as he took the bride's hand. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat, I pressed my face closer to the screen, rubbing my eyes again and again. The video quality was a bit blurry, the distance half a world away, but how could I mistake the man I had shared a bed with for 8 years? It was Mark. It was definitely Mark, my husband. And the woman in the elegant mermaid-style wedding gown, nestling her head on his shoulder with a look of pure bliss. It was none other than Jessica, the wealthy girl from a privileged background, Mark's college sweetheart, the one I'd heard his friends tease him about years ago. The world tilted on its axis. A roaring filled my ears. The beautiful wedding music now sounded like a death knell, each note a hammer blow against my sanity. But the cruel reality didn't stop there. Kevin's phone panned across the front row, reserved for the families. Seated in the most prominent spot was a woman in her late 60s. She wore a stunning, shimmering red silk dress, a heavy gold necklace gleaming at her throat, her hair styled elegantly. She was smiling a radiant, deeply satisfied smile and clapping along to the music. It was Helen, my mother-in-law, the woman who just 3 days ago had been sent home to die with terminal stomach cancer. The woman I had wept for, the woman I had begged to accompany so I could care for her, was now sitting in the seat of honor at her son's wedding. She was glowing with life, without a single trace of the frail, dying patient she was supposed to be. Her cold, dismissive look at the airport flashed in my mind, along with that envelope, $2,000. Payment for your services. It wasn't the bitter act of a dying person. It was the cold, calculated severance paid by a con artist before making a clean getaway. The stomach cancer, the rushed sale of our SUV, the swift withdrawal of our entire life savings, it was all a perfectly executed script, a cruel and spectacular deception. They had kicked me out of their lives, using my own money, my sweat and tears, to fly to Miami and reunite with his mistress. The phone slipped from my grasp, hitting the floor with a dry thud. I collapsed onto the cold wood, wrapping my arms around my chest, as if to hold myself together. A gut-wrenching scream tore from my throat, a sound of pure agony that pierced the silent night. A wave of madness washed over me. I grabbed a sofa cushion and hurled it against the wall, then ran to my sewing station, sweeping spools of thread, scissors, and measuring tapes to the floor. I buried my face in my knees and sobbed, each breath a ragged, choked gasp. 8 years of my youth. 8 years of sweat, tears, and even blood. I remembered the 3 times I'd seen 2 pink lines appear on a pregnancy test, my heart soaring with joy, only to find myself shivering on the cold, sterile table of an abortion clinic. Each time, Mark had held my hand, his voice a smooth, convincing lie. Our mortgage on this brownstone is killing us, Amy. I just got promoted, but my career isn't stable yet. If we have a baby now, what can we give it? How can we compete? Just wait a few more years. Once we pay off the house, we'll have as many kids as you want. 3 tiny souls, never given the chance to form, to see the sun, were sacrificed for the sake of his unstable career. I had gritted my teeth and endured the vicious whispers from his side of the family, calling me barren, useless. I had hunched over my sewing machine day and night until my eyes burned, just to help him pay off the mortgage on this house. I had prepared warm herbal foot soaks for that wicked mother-in-law of mine whenever she felt the slightest ache. And this is what I got in return? I was just a stepping stone, an unpaid housekeeper, a disposable cash machine they used and bled dry before callously kicking me into the mud. My 3 unborn babies had been sacrificed for their filthy, cruel scheme. Across the ocean, they were raising glasses of expensive champagne, toasting to their new life, building their happiness on the ruins of my pain and my youth. My tears eventually ran dry, leaving a bitter, hollow ache in my throat. A vast chasm of hatred opened within me. The faint light from the phone on the floor cast monstrous shadows on the ceiling. I wiped my swollen eyes and slowly got to my feet, my spine straightening in the darkness. Enough pain, enough blindness. Mark and Helen had performed a brilliant play, but they had forgotten one critical detail. The leading lady in this drama was still me, and I would not let them bring down the curtain this easily. Tonight, Amy, the naive, self-sacrificing wife, died by her sewing machine. In her place stood a woman with a fire of pure fury in her heart, A woman who would make those betrayers pay the ultimate price. A woman's tears are a powerful weapon, but when they run dry, all that remains is the cold, sharp blade of vengeance. Shock, pain, collapse. I strangled those weak emotions with my own 2 hands and buried them deep. After the horrifying live stream ended, I staggered up from the cold floor and walked to the bathroom. Staring at my swollen, ravaged face in the mirror, I slapped myself hard. The sting was a wake-up call, a brand to remind me that my own foolishness and blind faith had invited a pack of wolves into my home, allowing them to feast on my youth and drink my blood without a second thought. I threw open the bedroom window and took a deep breath of the cold night air, letting it wash away the last lingering traces of warmth from my treacherous husband. Then, I began to tear our house apart. They had planned so meticulously, clearing out anything of value, leaving not a single spare dollar behind. But no matter how clever the criminal, there is always a fatal flaw. For Mark, that flaw was an old, dusty laptop at the very bottom of his closet. It was a battered machine with a peeling aluminum case, one he had complained about for years before buying himself a new, expensive model. My hands trembled as I plugged it in and pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, displaying a password prompt. My heart hammered against my ribs. Our anniversary? Wrong. My birthday? Wrong. My eyes narrowed. A thought, sharp as lightning, struck me. I slowly typed in the birthday of Jessica, his so-called childhood sweetheart, a date he had once drunkenly mentioned years ago. Ping. The desktop appeared, opening a door to the darkest corners of his life. I navigated to a deeply hidden folder. Thousands of photos and dozens of short video clips appeared, swarming like maggots eating away at my soul. Pictures of them on lavish vacations, wrapped in each other's arms on sun-drenched beaches. Candlelit dinners at the most expensive restaurants. There were even clips of them in bed, moaning each other's names. They had been together for years. They were carrying on while I was breaking my back over my sewing machine to pay the mortgage on our house. More disgustingly, I found photos time-stamped to the exact week I was lying in a hospital bed, grieving the loss of our first baby. While I was crying myself empty for a child I had given up for his career, that monster was spending our money on designer handbags for his mistress. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. I ran to the bathroom and retched until only the bitter taste of bile was left. I splashed cold water on my face and forced myself back to the screen. Amidst the filth, one file stood out, an Excel spreadsheet. The file name was innocuous, but its contents were a death sentence for any lingering shred of hope. It was a detailed ledger, down to the last cent, of the massive funds Mark had secretly funneled to Jessica in the U.S. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, my blood, sweat, and tears. Money from the sale of our SUV, funds siphoned from our joint accounts, and even payouts from fraudulent insurance policies he and Helen had secretly set up. They had planned every single step, crafting the cancer lie with flawless precision. That crumpled envelope with $2,000 wasn't for my service to a sick mother-in-law. It was the cruel charity of a thief, tossing a scrap of bone to a loyal dog after stealing everything it had. There were no more tears left to cry. My eyes were clear, cold and still, like the surface of a frozen lake before a hurricane. I meticulously copied all the data, the photos, the videos, the Excel file, and the wedding live stream onto 3 separate encrypted USB drives, stashing them securely. Then, I changed into my most professional outfit, combed my tangled hair, and walked out of the house. My destination, the downtown office of Mr. Davies, a notoriously sharp lawyer specializing in contentious divorces, asset disputes, and financial fraud. Sitting across from him, I calmly placed one of the USB drives on the glass-top desk. My voice was steady, without a hint of the broken woman I had been just hours before. Mr. Davies, I want to file a lawsuit. Not just for divorce. I want to press charges for fraud, misappropriation of marital assets, and illegal international money transfers. Mr. Davies raised an eyebrow and plugged the drive into his computer. As the figures, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the damning photos filled his screen, his expression shifted from surprise to grim focus. Mrs. Miller, "This evidence is ironclad," he said. "But they've already fled the country. Recovering assets internationally will be a long and arduous battle. Are you prepared for a prolonged legal fight?" A cold, confident smile touched my lips. My gaze was fixed on a point beyond the window, my voice like ice. "They think because I'm a simple tailor, I'm an idiot. They think escaping to the other side of the world means they can sleep soundly on a bed made of my life's work. They're wrong, Mr. Davies. I'm going to set a trap. I will use their own greed to drag them back here. I swear, I will not let either of them know another day of peace. This game is just getting started." Leaving the lawyer's office, I walked back toward what was once my home. The wind whipped at my face, but a fire raged inside me. Standing before the imposing brownstone, I looked up. Every brick, every coat of paint, every piece of furniture had been paid for with my sleepless nights, with fingers pricked bloody by needles, with a frugality so extreme I wouldn't even replace a worn-out bra. Somewhere far away, Mark was probably holding his new bride, laughing at the foolish tailor he'd left behind, convinced I was weeping over a cold dinner. He thought, leaving me with the shell of a house while he ran off with the cash was the perfect crime. He assumed a woman like me, with no legal knowledge, would be trapped in a prison of humiliation and despair. But he was wrong. He forgot one crucial thing. A woman pushed to the absolute limit, a woman robbed of her motherhood and her dignity, has nothing left to lose and no mercy left to give. This house was our biggest joint asset, but the sweat that built it was mine alone. I would not let it become a museum to their deceit. I walked inside and immediately called Rick, a notoriously sharp and aggressive real estate broker in the area, known for flipping properties and closing deals at lightning speed. "Rick, it's Amy Miller from the corner brownstone," I said, my voice firm and clear. "You know the one. I want to sell it. Now." On the other end, Rick sounded intrigued. "Amy, that's a prime piece of real estate. Great location, solid build. What's your asking price?" I took a deep breath, my eyes sweeping over the expensive leather sofa Mark had insisted we buy to impress his clients. "I'm not asking. I'm pricing it to move 10% below the lowest comparable property in the neighborhood. But there's one non-negotiable condition. A cash offer of $750,000 or a single wire transfer. Quick close, no contingencies. The first person to meet the terms gets the house." There was a stunned silence on the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. A brownstone in Lincoln Park for that price was a steal, a piece of bait no investor could resist. The sheer profitability would blind any buyer to the legal risks of a co-owner being absent. "Are you serious, Amy? That's a massive discount." Rick's voice trembled with excitement at the thought of his commission. "But cash offers? I have VIP clients who can make that happen. Let me make some calls. I can have someone there today." I hung up. The game had begun. I calmly walked through the house, purging the remnants of my past. I packed a single old suitcase with my everyday clothes, my sharpest shears, and my sewing kit. All the expensive dresses and designer shoes Mark had bought to parade me around like a trophy, I threw into large black trash bags. My final stop was the living room wall, where a massive, ornate wedding portrait hung. I climbed onto a chair, used all my strength to lift the heavy frame off its hook, and carried it outside. Without a moment's hesitation, I hurled it into the dumpster at the end of the alley. Crash. The glass shattered into 1,000 sharp fragments, tearing through Mark's fake smile and my own naive face. The sound was music to my ears. Just as Rick had promised, a wealthy buyer arrived that afternoon. He barely glanced at the property before agreeing to the terms, willing to take the legal risk for such a massive profit. A contract was drawn up in minutes. He initiated the wire transfer on the spot. Ting! The notification lit up my phone screen. A balance of $750,000 now sat in my personal account. I stood in the now empty room, a cold, sharp smile on my face. This money wasn't just my fresh start. It was the perfect bait to burn Mark's entire charade to the ground. With my signature on the deed of sale still fresh, I left the brownstone and moved into a small, cramped studio apartment in a nondescript building. I hadn't become a destitute victim. The $750,000 was a fortress protecting me. But money alone couldn't heal the wounds of such a vile betrayal. My satisfaction would only be complete when that pathetic husband of mine came crawling back to pay his dues. But how to lure a man from his honeymoon half a world away? Not with tears or curses. For a man like Mark, who worshipped money and lived on lies, the only bait was the one asset he thought he still owned. He was arrogant enough to believe I, the foolish little tailor, would keep working to maintain his house. The greatest fear of a greedy man is watching his wealth slip through his fingers. He had used a fake cancer diagnosis to destroy me. Now, I would use one to drag him to hell. Sitting on the lumpy mattress in my new apartment, I took a deep breath. To make my performance convincing, I closed my eyes and pictured Helen's sneer at the airport, the video of their beach wedding, and worst of all, Mark's cold eyes as he forced me to get rid of our babies. The rage and sorrow boiled up inside me, transforming into a genuine, heart-wrenching sob. I pressed the record button on my phone for a voice message. Mark. Oh God, Mark. You have to help me. My voice broke, trembling with manufactured desperation. It's my mom. She's been diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer. The doctors said the tumor ruptured. She needs emergency surgery right now, or she won't make it. I paused, letting my choked sobs fill the silence. Then I delivered the final, decisive blow. The hospital wants $50,000 up front. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I went to the bank to take out a home equity line of credit on the house. They approved it immediately, but they said since the house is in both our names, they need your physical signature in person before they can release the funds. Mark, please, can you book a flight back? Just for a day? You have to sign the papers so I can save my mom. She's going to die if I don't get this money. I sent the message, a digital viper slithering across the ocean. Then I tossed the phone aside and wiped away my crocodile tears. A cold smirk spread across my face. Mark, basking in his romantic bliss, was about to get a bucket of boiling water thrown in his face. $50,000 to save his mother-in-law? A cold-hearted man like him wouldn't care. But the thought of a bank putting a lien on his $800,000 brownstone, that would send him into a blind panic. Just as I predicted, my phone immediately began buzzing. A frantic series of texts appeared. Amy, are you crazy? Listen to me. Do not sign anything with the bank. If you default, we'll lose the house. Then, a flurry of calls. I let it ring, imagining him pacing, sweating, on the other end. On the fourth call, I answered, my voice weak and weepy. Honey, calm down, he said, his voice a familiar, sickeningly sweet fake comfort. Don't give the deed to anyone. Lock it in the safe. Mom's treatment here is going well. I'm booking the first flight back to Chicago to handle this myself. Don't you dare mortgage that house, you understand? Okay, just please hurry. I'm so scared. I'm counting on you, I whispered, playing the role of the helpless, foolish wife to perfection. I hung up and burst out laughing. The sound echoed in the small room, filled with a chilling, triumphant glee. The greedy fool had swallowed the bait. He had no idea the steel trap had already snapped shut. The house was sold, the money was gone, and his frantic flight home was a one-way ticket to hell. The owner of the brownstone, impressed by my straightforward dealings, agreed to let me use the house for one final night to clear out the last of my things. My last piece of trash was Mark himself. The front door creaked open. Mark stumbled in, out of breath, his expensive shirt soaked with sweat. He looked around, his fake smile dying on his lips as he took in the cavernous, empty space. All the expensive furniture, the art, the big screen TV gone. Amy, what? What is this? Where is everything? And the deed? You didn't give it to the bank, did you? He stammered, his eyes darting around like a trapped rat. I rose slowly from the single plastic chair I'd placed in the middle of the room. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I calmly pulled a thick stack of papers from my bag and threw them at his feet. They weren't the house deed. They were divorce papers, already signed by me. Piles of color, photos of his wedding to Jessica, and on top, a bank statement, stamped in red, detailing every last dollar he had laundered to his mistress. Welcome home, my devoted husband, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Tired from your flight. How is your mother's terminal cancer? Or is she too busy clapping at weddings in a red silk dress? Mark's face went from red to white to a ghastly gray. He stared at the photos, his body trembling. He knew the game was up, but a cornered rat will always bite. He looked up, his face contorted with rage. Fine, you know. So what? I married Jessica, and it's your fault. 8 years, and you couldn't give me a child. My mother was desperate for a grandchild. I'm the only son. You pushed me to this. His vile, shameless words were the spark that lit the dynamite. My composure shattered. I lunged forward, my voice a raw scream. You bastard! Shut your filthy mouth. You dare say I couldn't have children? Tears streamed down my face. Tears not of weakness, but of pure, unadulterated rage for the lives he had forced me to destroy. What about our 3 babies? 3 times I lay on that cold metal table. Who put me there? I stepped closer, jabbing a finger at his chest. The first time I was 6 weeks pregnant. You begged me, said your career wasn't stable, that we couldn't afford it. The second time, you said a baby would distract you from a big promotion. The third time, when there was a heartbeat, you threatened to kill yourself if I didn't get rid of it. You murdered our children for your career, for your freedom, so you could take my money and spend it on that whore. And now you stand there and blame me for being barren? You inhuman monster. Mark collapsed. The truth, raw and brutal, stripped him of his last defense. He fell to his knees, reaching for me, sobbing. Amy, I'm sorry. I was wrong. She manipulated me. Please, for the 8 years we had, give me a way out. Don't go to the police. Where's the deed? We can sell the house. I'll give you half. I swear. I kicked his hand away in disgust. I leaned down, my lips close to his ear, and delivered the final, crushing blow. Too late, Mark. The house was sold days ago. The money is in my account. From this moment on, you are a broke, homeless bum. As for the money you sent to your precious Jessica, enjoy it. The law will be coming for you very soon. I turned and walked out, leaving him screaming and clawing at the floor of the empty house. The night swallowed his pathetic cries. My heart was finally light. A cornered animal is the most dangerous. Mark, now homeless and penniless, was desperate. Thanks to the private investigator I'd hired, I was able to listen in as his world completely imploded. The first call was from Jessica, her voice no longer sweet, but a shrill, panicked shriek. Her father's company, it turned out, was on the brink of bankruptcy. The money from our house was meant to be its salvation. What the hell is going on, Mark? She screamed. My dad's about to lose everything. Where is the money from that pathetic wife's house? You said you'd handle it. Are you going to let my family end up on the street? The second blow came with a threat. And your mother? She's racking up a huge hospital bill here. My family isn't a charity. If you don't wire that money, I'll have her discharged and thrown out. In his desperation, Mark turned to his last resort, a stash of dirty money he had skimmed from his company over the years. He contacted a shady figure named Manny, a known money launderer. My PI was right on his tail. They met in a grimy, secluded bar. The recording was crystal clear. The only way to move that kind of dirty cash fast is with a fake import-export deal, Manny explained. I've got shell corporations. We'll draft a phony contract, saying your father-in-law's company is selling us scrap electronics. Your money gets wired as payment. My fee is 15%. Mark, trapped and sweating, agreed. Fine, do it, as fast as you can. They sealed the deal, 2 criminals toasting to their scheme. They had no idea that in the adjacent room, my investigator was capturing every word. I listened to the recording in my small apartment, a grim smile on my face. The fool wasn't just caught in the trap. He was tightening the noose around his own neck. Fraud, embezzlement, and now a major money laundering charge. The net was ready. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to pull it tight. I walked into the FBI's Economic Crimes Division, my back straight, carrying a small briefcase. Inside were the 3 USB drives, the final verdict for the man who had destroyed my youth. An agent reviewed the evidence. When he heard the recording of the money laundering plot, his eyes widened. Ma'am, he said, you haven't just uncovered a case of marital fraud. You've exposed a significant international money laundering ring. With this, we can get them all. The sting operation was set for a desolate container yard on the outskirts of the city. Mark arrived, looking haggard and paranoid, clutching a heavy suitcase. He met Manny and opened the case, revealing stacks of cash. The moment Manny's grubby fingers touched the money, the yard exploded with flashing lights and sirens. FBI, don't move. Manny tried to run, but was tackled immediately. Mark just froze, then crumpled to the ground as an agent snapped a pair of cold steel cuffs on his wrists. His dream of a lavish life in Miami shattered into a million pieces. As they dragged him to a car, he screamed for his one phone call, and the number he dialed, to my surprise, was mine. I answered. His voice was a raw, hateful snarl. "You bitch! It was you! You set me up! I'll kill you for this! When I get out, I'll make you pay!" I let him rant, then spoke, my voice as cold and calm as a winter morning. "You're mistaken, Mark. I didn't put you here. Your own greed did. And by the way, as we speak, a court order is freezing every single one of your accounts. That includes the international account you set up for Jessica. Not a single penny can be withdrawn. Her father's company is finished. Tell them to get ready for bankruptcy. Enjoy prison." I hung up and blocked his number forever. Outside my window, the sun broke through the clouds. The storm was finally over. The courtroom was silent and imposing. I sat in the front row, calm and composed. When they led Mark in, he was a ghost of his former self. His hair was streaked with gray, his face gaunt. He wore a standard-issue prison jumpsuit and shuffled in his steps, his eyes fixed on the floor. He was a pathetic, broken man. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor laid out the entire scheme: the fake cancer, the fraud, the stolen assets, and the money laundering. The judge's gavel came down with a final, decisive crack. Mark was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. All frozen assets were ordered to be returned to me. But the most brutal justice came not from the court, but from life itself. A few days before the trial, I received a call. It was Jessica, sobbing hysterically. With the money pipeline cut off, her father's company had collapsed. The bank had foreclosed on their home. Helen, shocked by the news of her son's arrest and their financial ruin, had a massive stroke and was now lying paralyzed in a public hospital, with no money to pay for her care. And the cruelest blow of all, in the midst of the chaos and stress, Jessica had a miscarriage. "Please, Amy, I'm begging you," she wailed. "I've lost everything. My baby, my family. Please, drop the civil suit. Ask them to unfreeze some of the money so I can pay for Helen's care and fly home. Please, leave us a way to live." I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just a cold, final clarity. A way to live. When you were sleeping with my husband, spending my money, did you leave me a way to live? You mourn the baby you lost, but who mourns the 3 babies your lover forced me to discard so he could be with you? This is karma, Jessica. Now you get to taste what you served. Don't ever call me again. As they led Mark out of the courtroom, he paused beside me. He turned, his red-rimmed eyes meeting mine. His lips trembled as he mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't react. I didn't nod. I didn't even blink. I looked right through him, then turned and walked toward the heavy oak doors, toward the sunlight streaming in from outside. I left the ghost of my past to be swallowed by the darkness of his prison cell. 3 years passed. The deep, bleeding wounds of the past had finally scarred over, leaving a faint, silvery reminder of the storm I had survived. I am no longer the timid Taylor, nor am I the woman consumed by vengeance. I am simply Amy, a woman at peace. With the money I recovered, I opened a small boutique in a quiet neighborhood bordering Lake Michigan. I named it The Second Bloom. Here, amidst the gentle lapping of the waves, I combine my 2 passions. In one half of the shop, I design and create custom dresses, celebrating the beauty of my clients. In the other half, I sell vibrant, fresh flowers. The hum of my sewing machine now mingles with the fragrant scent of roses and lilies, a soothing symphony that has healed my soul. My days are my own, filled with simple, creative joys. Then, one quiet afternoon, Daniel walked into my life. He came in to buy a bouquet of white daisies for his late mother's grave. He was a kind, gentle man with a quiet strength, and as we talked, I learned he, too, had been deeply wounded by a divorce. We understood each other's scars without needing to say much. He didn't pursue me with grand gestures, but with small, steady acts of kindness. He'd stop by after work to help me move heavy pots of hydrangeas or fix a flickering light I'd been ignoring. In return, I would make him my special lemon ginger tea. We would sit and talk for hours, our shared experiences creating a bond of quiet understanding. One evening, as the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink, we sat together on the bench outside my shop. The air was cool and smelled of fresh blooms and the clean scent of the lake. Suddenly, Daniel turned to me, his eyes full of a warmth that made my heart ache in a good way. From behind his back, he produced a delicate bouquet of lily of the valley, their tiny bell-shaped blossoms exuding a sweet, pure fragrance. "For the owner of the flower shop," he said softly, a gentle smile on his face. "May all your days from now on be this peaceful." I took the flowers, their scent filling my senses. The meaning of the flower, the return of happiness, was not lost on me. I looked up at him, a genuine, radiant smile spreading across my face, a smile that came from the very depths of my healed heart. Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they were not tears of pain or bitterness. They were warm tears of gratitude, of a soul that had finally found its way back to the light. Under the glorious sunset, I knew I had closed the book on a dark and tragic chapter. A new one, filled with quiet love and gentle peace, was just beginning. A flower, no matter how much mud it has to push through, will eventually reach the sun and bloom more beautifully than ever before.